of owning a cafe and other heroic deeds by Beware the Tistero. Chapter 34. Sundays. Morning awoke him with the same unsettling jolting of bones and snapping of eyelids as it usually did. His alarm, why did he bother, set for 500, whilst his natural body clock found 4:47 to be a better option. How did people sleep a full 8 hours? Maybe he should start napping in the daytime. He could always sneak a camp bed or sleeping bag into the cafe somewhere, couldn't he? Sleep amongst the customers, lounge across the table, slump under the till. What an original thought. Then, shaking such an image out of his head and humming to himself, a habit he'd never been able to break, he sat up, switched off his alarm, rolled off his futon, and started doing press-ups. Once the required 50 were done, he pulled himself up, ran through a few kata, and moved swiftly to his wardrobe, where he grabbed the 2 outfits he'd been wearing today. The first was the sky blue t-shirt with the black cat painted over his heart, the same one he'd worn on their last outing, if he remembered rightly, with black loose cargo pants and similarly black unbranded sneakers, the same sneakers that had cost him just under 5,000 yen 5 years ago and were still serviceable. How anyone could or would pay more just for a symbol or a logo was beyond him. Illogical. The second was an old baggy t-shirt in faded red and his running shorts. He could get more. There were a few good sales at the outlet mall Tomura had bought Hitoshi's lovely blue suit from, wasn't there? And some 500 yen flip-flops he wore when cleaning the bathroom. Then laying the clothes out on his freshly made-up futon. He'd have to wash all of their bedding at some point this week, wouldn't he? He quietly peeked through his bedroom door to see the teens still snoozing away where he'd left them the night before. It'd start getting warm soon, wouldn't it? Grabbing the AC control, he kicked it up a notch, made his way to the bathroom. One of two he had to choose from now, so decadent. Whatever would his other little brothers think when they came for a visit? For a quick shower. He'd offer the other bathroom to the teens. Araka-san had done a great job scrubbing up the tiles, grouting them, and adding brand new fixtures and fittings. Dabi had asked him if they were going to buy one of those singing toilets. The look he'd given the teen had sent him into a fit of hysterics. They were growing young men and would probably appreciate the space, and he was sure that Hitoshi wouldn't mind sharing this one with him. The tat had been thrilled when the flame quirk user had similarly offered up his current bedroom so that he could be closer to him. All three of them, of course, had nightmares, but being the youngest, it was only natural that the 6-year-old wanted to be closer to the only adult he trusted who hadn't been taken from him. He could hardly wait to see Kimiko again. They were going to make a memory book. They'd picked it out together online. It was accented with orchid illustrations, which she'd love. And since she wouldn't be able to have and keep such a thing, what harm would it do, stupid bastard rules? They'd show it to her every time they visited. The first few pages would, of course, be filled with tales from the decorating they were doing today, photographs of the cats, and the Iris Hair Boy's little notes detailing their adventures, the good times he shared with his friends, and anything else he wanted to tell her about. God, poor kid. Shutting off the water once his body was effectively scrubbed, hair washed, and teeth cleaned, he snagged a towel and started to dry himself, his mind going over the next few weeks. By the end of today, June 17th, the cat cafe area should be mostly put together. There'd be more than enough of them to cover the decorating, cleaning, and final touches, surely. Then throughout the week, various delivery companies would be coming by with the cat products that he'd ordered, and a few surprises that Inko Mitsuki, Kaminari Ume, and Kirishima Jun had picked out for him and paid for. It was incredibly sweet of them, and they'd refused even a single yen for their efforts, alongside his regular ingredients orders. He managed to bag a great subscription to a pet website for bi-weekly cat litter, food, and treats that were healthy, low in fat, and good for cleaning teeth, for the customers to lavish on their feline family members, too. The same feline family members who Tomoko would diligently drive over in complimentary cat caviars, the old manager had insisted. He just wanted the animals he loved so much to be taken care of, and had promised to become a patron at the cafe. His food and drink would always be on the house, of course, on the 24th. He was irrationally excited by the thought, a thought that could only be rivaled by his soon-to-be employee's strong-arming tactics, for the Neko Nakama shelter also had great connections to a local vet. A vet whom, in exchange for rescuing the animals, had offered a 10% discount on all insurance plans, vaccinations, and emergency cover. However, after a gentle nudge and a deranged smile coupled with kind of wild flailing arm gesticulations President Mike would approve of from the pro-hero who'd he'd be interviewing tomorrow, the clinic had bumped that up to 20%. There was something to be said for getting a good bargain, wasn't there? However, and most importantly, this all meant that the health and safety inspectors could come in, sign everything off, and permit him to open the cat cafe proper before Sunday 31st. The Sunday that Hitoshi and Denki would celebrate their 7th birthdays together. Their 7th birthdays that would be his ward's first without both of his parents. They'd be able to meet with her on Sunday 7th July, though, President Mike's birthday, that all of the dads and teens had been similarly invited to. The heroes would be out of costume, but would only use their first names, not that any of them planned on revealing their identities to anyone. What happened in the evening? They'd all agreed that having a party to distract Hitoshi from his first prison visit was probably a good idea. If the excitement got too much for him, Izuku had whispered that the two of them could go upstairs and watch anime or something, and Inko, ever the sweetheart, had promised that she'd keep an eye on him as well. God, what would he do without these people now? It was funny, now that he reflected on it, his dark gaze regarding his appearance in the steamy bathroom's mirror. He looked a little younger, a little more his age, a lot happier, less stern, very nearly more relaxed than what he'd ever truly been before. Who'd have thought that on his mission to try and help or save other people, he'd end up being saved in return? Well, for however long this lasted anyway. Small mercy. Rise and shine, sleepyheads. Surprising his teenage housemates with a tray brimming with breakfast goodies, tamagoyaki with a little chili powder for Tomura, cold soba with a sliced soft-boiled egg for Dabi, both dishes garnished and surrounded by miso, seasoned rice bowls, and their favorite pickles. Shouta placed it on the small coffee table they'd inherited before drawing the curtains.
How is he like this at the Esquarkathon?
The Nikkei quirk user whined his face and burying into his partner's chest with a huff. I'm calling it now, the older teen sighed. He's a robot, pure and simple, he muttered while sluggishly grabbing at a cushion to pull over his face with a groan. It's fine by me if you guys don't want to show off your skills at that arcade you've been trying to drive me to for days, he deadpanned. I'm sure whoever that spinner kid is, he deserves to have his name on the top scoreboards of your favorite games. He baited further, a smile very nearly crawling across his face. 3, 2, 1.
Spinner!
The prick! Chuckling behind his hand as the boys were suddenly and enthusiastically energized, their forms sitting up in a jumble of limbs, he left them to their murderous mutterings. He'd have to keep an eye on that. Joviality aside, he'd rather them focus on my positive things, and walked through into the second living space the wide archway gave him access to. Then, his hair tied up and out of the way, he began to roll out the dust sheets in the 2 white-painted bedrooms, ready for the boys to put their own stamps on the ladder. Dabi had already cleared out his few things and placed them on the kotetsu table Mimi-chan had bought for them. It'd be nice for the 4 of them to crowd around it on the cold winter nights that rolled around in October, a thick blanket sandwiched between the wooden top and a little heater tucked underneath, whilst they ate warming soup, spicy dumplings, and indulged in hot chocolate. Since when had he ever longed for something so domestic for himself? Since when had he convinced himself that the teenagers would choose to stick around for that long? Chuckling to himself, the dust sheets effectively covering the tatami mats, he then grabbed his roll of masking tape and began to quickly cover the skirting board with it. Sure, he didn't particularly mind if the kids made a mess, but the clean, straight lines give a nice professional, rational finish to the room. Even if he had heard Hitoshi considering Katsuki suggesting that he paint his room full of explosions, Denki had helpfully added that lightning bolts were cool, whilst Eijiro had veritably screamed, "Dragons, Toshi! Dragons are so heckin' manly!" At 800, the water having been shut off for an hour, the toilets drained, Araraka-san, "Real, please, Shotoku, you're like family to me and my best girls, you know?" And Din-san arrived in the Sandy Blonde's faithful K-truck. He greeted them, shown them where all of the power outlets were, provided a table loaded with lemonade and a small chilled box of onigiri to nibble on. That done, they assured him that they'd call if they needed or wanted anything, and Shouta went about doing a few odd jobs. He rang up a few tax calculations on the smart till, gathered the employment contract paperwork he'd need for Tomoko, and wondered a little guiltily if he shouldn't have canceled the Tat's self-defense class. No. 2 missed sessions wouldn't hurt anything, and the adults had actually thanked him for postponing it. The June heat kept building, didn't it? From now on, he'd have the cafe open for them to nip into for a cool-down, too. Perhaps since the classes had become so popular, he should approach the little yoga studio a few blocks away to see if he could hire a Sunday slot for them to use. Ding, ding! Morning, Shoni! Looking up from the service bar, his smile soft. The eatery owner looked down at the 6-year-olds, both soon to be 7. God, where was the time going? As they scuttled up to him, their grins pleasantly excited. "Thought you have a fun sleepover?" he asked. "Oh, would you like anything to eat or drink?" "We had such a good time," his ward stated, while Suzuku nodded enthusiastically. "But not as good as our campouts," he furthered, his little hand grabbing his friend's. Could we please have a sleepover here, when all the work is done? So long as it's okay with Inko-san and not on a school night. Of course you can. He chuckled. Damn, they were rationally cute. The pair cheering, their joined hands punching the air as though they were celebrating a hard-won victory. It was just a sleepover, however, as he waved them into a booth. He blinked, thinking back to the Tats he'd met when he first arrived there. Izuku, devastated, quirkless, friendless, his mother eating her heart out in despair for his well-being. Hitoshi, quiet, dark-eyed, lonely, and frightened, his world closed off and smothered in worry. There was no just about it, was there? Hell, this could very well be their first official sleepover in a place that neither of them had grown up in, couldn't it? Damn, that was a pretty big deal, right? Well, he thought it was. When he was in elementary and middle school, he remembered people his age talking about such things excitedly. As an orphan who didn't have his own room, his own futon often crowded by the other boys, he had not seen what the fuss was all about. He had never been invited to one. He had never had any friends. His little brothers were family, so they didn't count, and they needed him. He'd been useful, that had been important. Or anyone who just wanted to spend time with him. Being wanted by someone, by anyone, just for his sparkling personality wasn't a rational idea. He knew fundamentally that his parents had liked him and enjoyed his company, but he couldn't recall anyone else ever saying so. No, outside of what he could provide. Food, tutelage, safety, security. No one had ever wanted him around, and even though that didn't seem to be the case here, now that he was older and surrounded by these people, all so amazing, strong in their own right, he wouldn't take it personally when they got tired of him, the cafe, grew up and left. He knew it was inevitable. He'd accepted it. It didn't bother him. And it didn't matter, because his goal was to help as many people as he could. Anyway, but he did worry from time to time that his social ineptitude could possibly hurt the younger people he'd inadvertently gathered around him. His lack of experience when it came to what normal people wanted or needed to be happy was making him feel a little unsure. He'd have to ask Inko or Mitsuki later, wouldn't he? 8:30 had seen him and the boys venture out into the temperature heat. Tomo's pale green hoodie, the hood up, of course, and sunglasses had made Izuku gush, and Hitoshi, similarly starstruck, had wondered when he'd be tall enough to wear the style of summer coat which floated around Dabi in some kind of majestic allure. It was a shame that they didn't make such things for soon-to-be 7-year-olds. Speaking of which, that was the special mission he'd tasked the teens with, their birthdays having sadly come and gone already. There was always next year, if they decided to stay with him that long, wasn't there? What should he get the tots for their birthdays? Kaminari Koji had tried to laugh him off until he told him bluntly that Denki was having a gift regardless. He just wanted to know what'd be best. Because children deserve nice things. Because children should have nice things, especially on special occasions. Watching as the man had turned slightly blue across his forehead, he had been assured that the other would be back in touch soon with an idea for him. Good. Similarly, Inko had tried to dissuade him. He had not meant to make her cry. He felt awful afterwards, but he reflected it didn't take much to set her off. She had such a big heart, and had bowed at her and apologized, creating somehow more tears, until she'd calmed down and relented. An all-night stationery set, complete with 2 new notebooks for quirk analysis, were on his shopping list, whilst the tots and teens enjoyed the large arcade they were heading to. But Hitoshi, so quiet, never one to ever ask for anything, well, he needed help there. He was sure that between them, the older boys could coax an idea or two out of him. It had been strange on reflection how the favor he'd asked had played out, though. There they'd been, the boys' breakfast eaten, as he came to take the dishes away, the task on his lips when Dobby had locked eyes with him. "When's your birthday?" he asked. Sometime in November the 8th, I think," he replied, his mind so preoccupied with whether or not he'd done all of the preparation work for the 2 workmen that he nearly dumped into his turquoise-eyed lodger, who'd somehow manifested in front of him. "What do you mean, you think?" the other had challenged, his expression strangely serious. "Oh, well, I can't remember the last time I did anything special, on the day," he replied with a light shrug. "Now, come on, you'll have to be quick if either of you want a shower before I have to shut the water off." And since then, he'd not thought anything of it. However, as they made their way down to the nearest subway station, Hitoshi and Izuku dancing about and shouting to make echoes in the tiled tunnel, he noticed that the teens kept sneaking glances at him and each other. He hoped he hadn't somehow offended or upset them. He'd have to talk to them a little later, now wouldn't he?